What if one of Hollywood's toughest action stars carried a secret so personal, it could change the way you see him forever? Vin Diesel may be known for his role as Dominic Toretto, the fearless leader of the Fast and Furious family. But behind the cameras, his real story is even more powerful. After the shocking loss of his best friend Paul Walker, Diesel stepped into a role nobody expected, one that would tie him to Paul's daughter Meadow in ways that left fans stunned. From hidden promises, private grief, and family secrets, to emotional tributes that still bring fans to tears, the truth about Vin Diesel's bond with Paul Walker has finally surfaced. And what you're about to hear will reveal the side of Diesel that Hollywood rarely shows. Before the world knew Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto, he was just a kid growing up in New York with a complicated family story. Raised by his mother and stepfather, Vin never actually met his biological father. That mystery, that missing piece in his life, shaped the way he viewed family. To Diesel, family wasn't defined by blood alone. It was about loyalty, trust, and the people who stood by you no matter what. So when he first met Paul Walker on the set of The Fast and the Furious back in 2001, something clicked instantly. What started as two actors stepping into their roles quickly grew into a brotherhood that felt real, not scripted. Their chemistry wasn't just good acting, it was genuine connection. Vin once admitted that Paul reminded him of the brother he always wanted, and that sense of loyalty bound them together both on and off screen. Behind the high-octane car chases and blockbuster success, Paul and Vin built a friendship rooted in trust. They weren't just co-stars sharing a paycheck. They were two men from completely different worlds who somehow found family in each other. And while Hollywood friendships often fade once the cameras stop rolling, this bond only grew stronger. Paul became more than a colleague. He became the missing piece in Vin's definition of family. But as their careers skyrocketed and the Fast franchise became one of the biggest in movie history, nobody could have imagined the tragedy that was about to test that bond in the most heartbreaking way possible. Paul Walker wasn't just another Hollywood star. He was a man who lived with a rare balance of humility and thrill-seeking passion. While the world saw him as Brian O'Connor, the undercover cop turned gearhead in Fast and Furious, his friends knew him as someone who loved the ocean, cars, and helping people. Paul was a devoted father, a philanthropist, and someone who preferred surfing and quiet family time to Hollywood red carpets. But on November 30th, 2013, the world stopped. Paul had spent the day at a charity event, raising funds for victims of Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. It was the kind of thing he often did, giving back quietly without looking for headlines. That evening, he got into a Porsche Carrera GT with his friend Roger Rodas. Just a short distance from the event, tragedy struck. The car lost control, and within seconds, Paul was gone. The news spread like wildfire. Fans across the globe were in shock, but for Vin Diesel, it was more than just losing a co-star. It was losing his brother. Vin flew to California immediately, not only to grieve, but to be with Paul's family. The heartbreak was overwhelming. In a moment that still moves fans to tears, Paul's mother hugged Vin and told him, "I'm so sorry." Vin's reply, "Sorry? You're the mother who lost a son." But her words cut deep. "Yes, but you lost your other half." That was the truth of their bond. This wasn't just Hollywood friendship. It was family in the purest form. And in that moment, Vin made an unspoken choice. Paul's daughter Meadow would never face this world alone. In the middle of his grief, Vin Diesel found himself thinking about someone who had just lost even more. Paul's 15-year-old daughter, Meadow. She had only recently moved in with her father full-time, finally getting the kind of relationship she had always wanted with him. And then, in an instant, he was gone. But Paul had already made one thing clear before his passing. He trusted Vin to be Meadow's godfather. It wasn't just a title, it was a promise. And when the worst happened, Vin stepped into that role without hesitation. When he arrived in California after the accident, Vin wasn't just a grieving friend. He was a protector. He was there for Paul's mother, for the family, but especially for Meadow. Vin has admitted that he thought his strength would comfort them. Instead, it was the family who gave him strength, reminding him that he wasn't just Paul's co-star. He was now part of Paul's legacy. From that moment forward, Diesel became more than just Meadow's godfather. He became her second father. He included her in his family gatherings, made sure she felt loved, and even wove Paul's memory into his own children's lives. Years later, Vin named his youngest daughter Pauline, so Meadow would always see her father's name living on in the family. And for Meadow, Vin wasn't just a reminder of what she had lost. He became a reminder of what she still had: family, loyalty, and someone who would never walk away. But as close as they became, their bond would soon be tested in ways no one expected. Long before the world knew her as a model or the daughter of a Hollywood star, Meadow Walker lived a quiet life away from the spotlight. Born in Los Angeles in 1998 to Paul Walker and Rebecca Soteros, she spent most of her early childhood in Hawaii with her mother. For years, her father was more of a visitor than a constant presence. Filming schedules, travel, and Hollywood life kept Paul busy. But everything began to change in her teenage years. Meadow eventually moved to Los Angeles to live with Paul full-time. For Paul, it was like a dream come true. He often spoke about how having his daughter under his roof was the best thing that ever happened to him. Just months before his passing, he said that living with Meadow made him feel complete, like he was finally the father he had always wanted to be. Tragically, their time together was cut painfully short. Less than a year after Meadow moved in, Paul was gone. Imagine the heartbreak. After waiting so long to have her dad close, she lost him right as their bond was finally forming. For any teenager, the loss of a parent is devastating, but for Meadow, it was also a public tragedy. The world knew her father, millions mourned him, and yet she had to grieve not just privately, but with the weight of the world watching. In those dark moments, it was Vin Diesel who stepped in, not to replace Paul, but to make sure Meadow would never feel abandoned. He gave her the sense of family she had just begun to experience with her dad. And slowly, that connection would evolve into something even more powerful, a bond that blurred the lines between godfather and father. But this wasn't just about comfort. Over the years, Vin and Meadow's relationship would play out in deeply symbolic moments that showed just how far Diesel was willing to go to honor Paul's legacy. After Paul's passing, Vin Diesel didn't just keep his promise as a godfather. He embraced Meadow as if she were his own daughter. What could have been a distant, ceremonial title turned into a true family bond. Vin made sure Meadow was not just cared for, but loved, woven seamlessly into his own family's life. One of the most touching parts of their relationship is how natural it became. Meadow often spends time with Vin's children, and their bond runs so deep that she feels more like an older sister than just a family friend. Diesel has shared that Meadow is always the very first person to message him on Father's Day, a gesture that says everything about how she sees him, not just as her godfather, but as a father figure. Then there's Diesel's youngest daughter, Pauline, who carries Paul Walker's name. Vin once admitted that he felt Paul's presence in the delivery room, guiding him when he chose her name. For Meadow, seeing Vin honor her father in such a permanent way made their connection even stronger. It was proof that Paul's memory would live on, not only through her, but within Vin's family too. There are moments Vin has described that reveal just how close they've become. He recalls watching Meadow play with his kids and suddenly being struck with emotion, imagining Paul looking down and seeing their children laughing together. For Vin, it was almost like Paul was still here, watching his daughter grow, surrounded by love. But the most powerful proof of their bond came years later, during a moment so symbolic it left fans around the world in tears. When Paul passed, the world mourned, but for Vin Diesel and the Fast and Furious cast, the loss was more than personal. It was woven into the very fabric of their work. Filming for Fast and Furious 7 had already begun, and suddenly, the franchise's heart was gone. How do you finish a movie when the soul of it has disappeared? For Vin, the answer was clear. You don't move on, you honor. He described it as one of the hardest things he'd ever done, acting as if Paul was right there next to him, even though he wasn't. They don't teach you in acting school how to mourn someone and still pretend they're in the scene with you, Vin once admitted. The production found a way forward. Paul's brothers, Cody and Caleb, stepped in as body doubles for his final scenes. It wasn't just about finishing a film, it was about protecting Paul's legacy. Vin has said that seeing the Walker family on set gave him strength, and more importantly, it validated that what they were doing was the right thing. Then came the ending, the farewell scene that left millions of fans sobbing. Brian O'Connor, Paul's character, didn't die on screen. Instead, he was given a symbolic goodbye, driving off into the sunset. It was a send-off so beautifully crafted that it felt like more than a movie. It felt like Hollywood pausing to grieve with the entire world. For Vin Diesel, that moment was never just about a character leaving. It was about saying goodbye to a brother while keeping his spirit alive. Even years later, fans still replay that scene, hearing the final notes of "See you again" and remembering the bond between Vin and Paul that no script could ever truly capture. But Diesel's tributes to Paul weren't limited to the big screen. In real life, he continued to carry his friend's legacy forward. And nowhere was that more visible than in the way he supported Meadow as she grew into her own life and career. While many assumed Meadow would follow in her father's footsteps and become an actress, she chose a different path. Instead of Hollywood, she stepped into the world of fashion, quickly becoming a sought-after model. Walking runways for top designers like Alexander McQueen and Proenza Schuller, Meadow carved out her own identity, proof that she could honor her father while still creating her own story. But even as her career took off, she never forgot the man who meant everything to her. In 2015, just 2 years after Paul's passing, Meadow founded the Paul Walker Foundation. Its mission was simple but powerful: to continue the charitable work her father had started, focusing on ocean conservation and empowering young people. Through scholarships, environmental projects, and community support, she turned her grief into purpose, proving that her father's passion for helping others would never die. Meadow also fought for justice. She filed a lawsuit against Porsche, claiming the car her father was riding in lacked critical safety features that might have saved his life. The legal battle was grueling, but in the end, Meadow reached a settlement. For her, it wasn't about money, it was about accountability and making sure no other family had to experience what she did. Despite the pain, Meadow found ways to celebrate Paul's memory publicly. Every year on his birthday, she shares heartfelt tributes online, posting rare photos and calling him her best friend. And in 2023, she even took her tribute one step further by stepping into the Fast and Furious universe herself. Meadow appeared in Fast X, a cameo that wasn't just fan service. It was a symbolic moment that connected her to her father's legacy on screen. Through her career, her foundation, and her resilience, Meadow proved she is very much her father's daughter. And at every step of the way, Vin Diesel was right there, not just as a supporter, but as family. But nothing revealed the depth of their bond more than one single day in 2021, a moment so emotional it left millions speechless. In October 2021, Meadow Walker stood on a beach in the Dominican Republic, wearing a custom gown as she prepared to say "I do." It should have been her father by her side, walking her down the aisle, but Paul wasn't there. Instead, it was Vin Diesel, his best friend, his brother, and Meadow's godfather, who proudly took that walk with her. That single moment spoke louder than any words could. Fans across the world saw the pictures and instantly understood. Vin wasn't just honoring Paul's memory. He was fulfilling the role Paul would have wanted him to. Diesel's own daughter, Hania, served as Meadow's maid of honor, further blending the two families into one. For Meadow, the gesture was deeply symbolic. The man her father trusted most had stepped into his place on one of the most important days of her life. For Vin, it was more than duty. It was love, a promise kept, and a final tribute to the bond he shared with Paul. Even on social media, Vin often refers to Meadow as family. He shared how she takes care of him, how she's the first to reach out on Father's Day, and how seeing her with his children makes him feel Paul's presence all over again. To the outside world, it may look like a touching friendship, but to those who know the story, it's clear Meadow is family, not by blood, but by choice. And just when it seemed like their story couldn't get more powerful, Meadow made one final move that forever linked her back to her father's cinematic legacy. Even a decade after Paul Walker's passing, his presence lingers, not only through the Fast and Furious franchise, but through the lives of the people he loved most. Vin Diesel, now more than ever, continues to carry Paul's memory like a brother who never left his side. He named his daughter Pauline after Paul, a reminder that his best friend's spirit would always be a part of his family. And through Meadow, that connection has only deepened. Meadow herself has become the embodiment of Paul's legacy, kind-hearted, strong, and devoted to giving back. From building her career in modeling to running the Paul Walker Foundation, she has found her own way of keeping her father's light alive. Her yearly tributes, her cameo in Fast X, and the quiet way she honors him all prove that Paul Walker's story didn't end in 2013. It continues through her. For Vin Diesel, this bond has gone far beyond friendship. It's proof that family isn't always about blood. It's about love, loyalty, and the promises you keep when no one else is watching. Walking Meadow down the aisle, supporting her dreams, celebrating her milestones. These are the moments that show how deeply he meant it when he said, "We're family." And maybe that's the most powerful, untold truth of all. Behind the Hollywood lights, the cars, and the blockbuster films lies a story of chosen family. A story of two men who found brotherhood, and of a daughter who still carries her father's spirit, supported by the man he trusted most. In the end, Paul Walker's legacy isn't just about the movies he made or the fame he achieved. It's about the love he left behind, the lives he touched, and the family who still carries his name forward. And, as Vin Diesel often reminds the world, some bonds don't end with goodbye. They live on forever. Paul Walker's story may have ended far too soon, but his legacy lives on in the Fast and Furious films, in his daughter Meadow, and in the unbreakable loyalty of Vin Diesel. What started as a Hollywood partnership turned into something far deeper. A chosen family that continues to honor Paul with every milestone, every tribute, and every act of love. So the real question is, was this Vin Diesel simply keeping a promise to his best friend, or was it something even greater? Maybe it was destiny that Paul's daughter would find strength in the man her father trusted most. One thing's for sure, when Vin Diesel says, "We're family," it isn't just a movie line. It's a truth that is carried through tragedy, triumph, and time itself. And perhaps that's why fans will always remember this story, not just as Hollywood drama, but as proof that some bonds are too powerful to break.